Here's how badly Donald Trump's week is going in Washington, just through facts. One, Trump cares more about the attorney general position than just about anything else in government. It is the fulcrum of his efforts to break the rule of law, to punish and indict enemies, and to have sort of favorable treatment of what he perceives to be his vulnerabilities, tax audits and the like. You've probably heard about that in the news. That's number one. Number two, today was a scheduled vote in a Republican-controlled Senate to confirm his attorney general nominee. And as a reminder, most of Trump's cabinet has been pretty straightforward, pretty easily confirmed by this Republican Senate. And yet, if you've been watching the news, the top of this broadcast, or really any news lately, you might have heard that Trump is crashing in approval. Republicans less afraid of him, don't need to work with him as much, depending on the issue. And that brings us to point number three. The plan to install, controversially, his former personal criminal defense lawyer as attorney general is derailed. That scheduled vote, off. So that right there is a loss or a setback in the plan. If they had the votes, we know how Congress works, they would have voted today. Translation, they don't have the votes, and we have more evidence on that. But this has been derailed. Donald Trump's plans not going the way he wanted, and the fear of crossing him is fading. Trump says, in response to this setback, that maybe he would just pull the whole nomination, which is a kind of ploy to leave Todd Blanche in as acting AG. Then the midterms would come. Trump is hoping they hold the Senate, and then the two senators causing the most problems, who he primaried, would be gone, and he hopes replaced by more loyal Republicans. But that itself is a gamble that requires them winning the midterms, which is really up in the air, especially when you look at the polling and the war. Cornyn responding that there are other senators that have similar concerns, they just haven't been flushed out in public, which is an interesting point we will discuss tonight. What he's basically saying is he's the heat shield. Other people oppose this, but they don't need to get into a party civil war if the nomination is already stalled. And that came hours after Cornyn sent the DOJ a new proposal to try to resolve this sort of fake, made-up settlement deal that Trump claims would immunize him and his family from future audits. All of this tied up as well in the plan to try to give out money to MAGA-allied convicts. Now, Cornyn told reporters already that the way things are going, meaning as of that moment, he was just going to vote no on the AG nominee.
Every time I think we're getting close to a resolution, somebody throws a wrench into the work. So we, this morning, it looks like we're no closer than we were before. I am prepared to vote no, but I do think I owe it to my constituents and to Mr. Blanche to try to negotiate in good faith. And that's what we've been doing.
The sound you hear is of a Republican actually using a little bit of their power as a co-equal branch to govern and regulate the executive branch, in one that many people say has become a runaway executive branch. Now, we'll leave it to the side for now whether Cornyn could have done this. I don't know. Any time in the last 6 years, he lost his seat anyway. But that's where we stand. Now, the Republican Majority Leader, Thune, is still trying to work with Trump to come up with some resolution before this long summer recess begins, which sort of would put a fork in the whole plan. Here's how Politico, a nonpartisan outlet, puts it. Thune leaving the door open to getting Blanche confirmed next week if the senators are able to come to a deal with the DOJ. But, and this is crucial, Politico writes, Cornyn and Tillis have yet to blink. Trump is threatening to take his ball and go home. That would be, obviously, a very public loss in a very key agency, the Department of Justice, all because these senators decided to stand up for something. So, not your normal narrative, a little bit different. I want to bring in Andrew Weissmann, former FBI general counsel, former Mueller prosecutor. He has lived the intersection of the DOJ and Congress. When Congress is doing its job, it can exercise a productive type of oversight. That's why we see people, including the Attorney General, testify. Lately, I think a lot of folks are skeptical or cynical about the whole thing. We'll put to the side Cornyn's newfound constitutional responsibility. And we can do it in 3 minutes. But for now, what's happening here, and do you see this as a type of progress?
Look, it is, as you said, it is a loss. Even if ultimately he is confirmed, in short order or upon a new Senate if the Senate is still controlled by Republicans. It is still a loss. But having said that, the idea that you have Senator Thune and others willing to confirm somebody where the hill that two senators have chosen to die on, where they have drawn the line, is such small potatoes. This is somebody who has subpoenaed the New York Times, and his own lawyers have had to go to court and say, we made mistake after mistake, and we didn't even read the leading case on point, and so we're in violation of law. And then the Department of Justice issues a press statement saying that the judge is wrong. After a court appearance where they had to admit over and over again how it was the department that violated the law. You have Todd Blanche, Department of Justice, trying to indict 6 sitting members of Congress. You have them trying to open a criminal investigation into Jerome Powell and the Federal Reserve. You have them in violation of the Epstein Transparency Act. You have a federal judge who said that Mr. Abrego Garcia was vindictively prosecuted and laying the blame clearly over and over again at the feet of Todd Blanche. And you have a federal judge who has referred Todd Blanche and what the bad faith conduct in connection with this so-called settlement slush fund to the Bar Association for the nominee to be the head of the Justice Department. And yet you have just 2 Republican senators saying that there's a problem.
Well, I'll paraphrase Tucker Carlson, as I am wont to do. We had Big Pun earlier quoted in the show, but Tucker said about this moment in the Trump era very accurately, and we're supposed to pretend this is normal? I mean, there is nothing normal or in bounds about this kind of attorney general. And whether people like to hear it or not, the president is fully entitled to nominate a qualified attorney general who has strong conservative policy views.
Absolutely.
Jeff Sessions was, at the time, one of the most right-wing voting members of the Senate, but he did, by all accounts, follow the DOJ rules, went through a confirmation process. Here you have someone who, as you're pointing out, is already on a rampage against the rule of law, against the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, probably, depending on how you view the subpoena abuse, and a heck of a lot of other rights and rules. And so you kind of say, to get back to the Cornyn of it, if I can nerd out with you.
Yep.
If this flies, then what the heck? I want to play a little bit of This Was Trump and Cornyn, because this has become their standoff.
Yep.
Maybe
You have said that the weaponization fund is a moot issue. Is that your position? At the time, that has nothing to do with it. This is about making sure that that even if you're the president of the United States, you don't get favorable terms from the government in a settlement of a lawsuit that ordinary citizens would not get.
You know, it's a combination of lawyerese and Washingtonese. The way he says that, I mean, I have it written here. You don't get favorable terms from the government in a settlement of a lawsuit that ordinary citizens would not get. No. You don't get to corrupt the entire Justice Department to do self-enrichment that can endanger the public good.
Yeah, absolutely. Remember, the general release that is at issue here was signed by one and only one person, Todd Blanche.
Yeah.
And Todd Blanche, at his confirmation hearing, made it absolutely clear, and frankly, to his credit, that he is no Elliot Richardson, that the way he is going to run this Justice Department is if the president says I should do it, I'm going to do it, period, the end. Elliot Richardson famously was the attorney general who said, when Richard Nixon said, fire the special counsel, Archibald Cox, he said, no, I'm not going to do it. Find yourself another patsy to do that. Todd Blanche made it very clear, and frankly, now the reporting on what we're seeing in connection with this new James Comey indictment, that's exactly what happened, where the White House was behind all of it. And he is saying that is the new model. I am throwing out the sort of traditional Republican and Democratic model post-Watergate is not how Todd Blanche is going to run this. And again, that should be, just to get back to sort of this idea of normalization of it, that should be something that Republican and Democratic senators should be saying no to, because the next president can be a Democrat, and it will be just as bad if the Department of Justice is just doing what the White House is saying that you should do in terms of who to prosecute and who not to prosecute. It's like that should be something that people should be able to coalesce around.
The president's vote for his attorney general nominee, Todd Blanche, was scheduled for today and canceled, derailing a process that has sort of taken on a life of its own. Andrew Weissman is back with us. So Trump says, all right, if I can't win back these Republicans who have these low standards you already discussed, they won't even meet them. He says, we'll just leave Blanche as acting AG, and next year I'll get new Republican senators he expects to replace these ones to vote with him. That means they would hold the Senate. What do you view as Trump's calculation here, and how would this actually work?
So there are a couple things. One, he can bet on the fact that the Republicans will hold the Senate, but that's a risk.
Who knows?
It may not happen, in which case you could easily imagine the Democratic majority saying no, and saying, you know what, you have to have somebody who is more moderate. For instance, somebody who believes in the post-Watergate norm of being independent, or who doesn't seek to indict 6 members of Congress for asserting something that's protected by the First Amendment. I mean, I could go on and on. So that's one. 2, he could, even if the Republicans lose the Senate, he can keep the acting attorney general as acting for as long as possible. And there's a lot of complication about the law when we could really nerd out on that issue.